Good morning and welcome back to the 5 Points Bank Arena. Kicking off, hard to believe, the final day of the Nebraska State Fair as we start with our FFA Market Lamb Show. This is Class 1 of lightweights from 107 to 125.
Well, good morning. Pleasure to be back here this morning, and boy, what a great way to start the Market Lamb Show this morning with a really nice set of lightweight crossbred wethers in this particular class. I thought as they walked in, the pair that we start with were the two that were going to be towards the top. I knew that just based on design and boldness and center body and width and structure and stoutness, these two were going to work their way up pretty high in this particular class. And as you get your hands on them, certainly you see that they're the pair that we need to keep up there. You know, I think as we get into this top pair, the weather that wins it just balances up a tick better for me from the side. That extra length of body, that extra height and elevation up in the front end gives him a notch better look. But he also, when you get your hands on him, just squares up a little better at the base of his shoulder. He's got more true shape and dimension in his rack and working back through his loin. Probably carrying just a notch less condition. He's more ideal in terms of composition for me, and one that I think when you handle and you get that smoothness and that firmness and shape down his top is one you just really have to appreciate in this lightweight class. Probably as much width and maybe just a tick more center body in this one here in second. And I love the stoutness. When you study him in terms of foot and bone size, you really have to appreciate that. I think an awfully good one. He does get just a tick softer over that fore rib. I think as we compare him to our class winner, I still think he's very acceptable there, but maybe not quite as shapely, not quite as good in terms of the firmness and freshness down his top as we have in our class winner, but an awful good one here in second as well. We start to run out of a little bit of power on this next one. This sheep is really balanced, really attractive, and that's why we just kept leaving him up in that top end. When I get on the three-quarter view of this one, I just want to pull him apart across the plane of that stifle. He gets a little narrower and flatter compared to the two that stand ahead of him. But I think when you compare him to the sheep right behind him, he is better in terms of the turn in his fore rib. I think he's the sheep that from the last rib back handles a little fuller and deeper in terms of his edge as we compare him to this lamb in fourth. Love the front end, love the design of this one in fourth. And if we were just standing off and studying a profile, this is probably the one that suits me a tick better to move up into third. But then when you handle him, he's a sheep that's just a little raw today. Doesn't quite come up in that loin edge where I want it to be. He's not quite as full and fresh in terms of his handle. A great design sheep that for me probably needed just a little more time to get up into that top three, but that's really nice weather as well. Congratulations to that young lady. We've got a ewe lamb in fifth that I thought was awfully nice. Tremendous amount of power and product. Just one that ran out of gas in terms of balance and look and extension as we compare her to the Weathers instead of head, but a really nice sheep there as well. Good start today. Let's congratulate these kids on a nice class.
We're set to bring in lightweight class number two. Class number two away from 126 to 129. The results of class one blue ribbon winners include Shaylee Sanderson from Pender FFA. She had two blues. Kylie Odell from the Bertrand Loomis FFA. Jackson Blumstead from the McCook FFA. Grace Mitchell from O'Neill FFA, Regina Painter from the Cambridge FFA, and Alex Klatt from the Wilcox-Hildred FFA. Purple ribbon winners will include Ellen Schmidt from the Fairbury FFA, Lindley Schwartzendruber from the Shickley FFA. Second purple will go to Grant Mussel from the Wilbur-Claytonia FFA. And first purple, congratulations to Hayden Schroeder from the Wisner-Pilger FFA.
Well, another really nice class here. They're a little more challenging as I get into the top end of this class to find that one that kind of checks all the boxes. But we've got one here that gets close in my mind, one that's really structurally built right. He's got the right kind of skeleton. He presents himself nicely on the move. He's up fronted. He's got enough width and dimension when you study him on that three-quarter view. Maybe we'd change his handle just a bit and just get a tick more firmness and shape as you handle him down his top. But that's getting picky on one that's really good on his feet and legs. It's really good in his rib design. That's really good in his hip when you take that three-quarter view. It's a nice weather to start this particular class. This one here is one that probably does have the handle quality that I like, and I think just tremendous in terms of shape and dimension down his top. He's one when we set him on the move, I just want to get that shoulder up in him and get that breastplate shoved up in him just a tick more, maybe not quite as balanced as the sheep on either side of him. He's got way too much power and way too many good things about him for me to let him get out of this top pair, but I do want to make him just a bit more balanced. I want to elevate him at the point of his shoulder and maybe just take that breastplate up in him just a tick when we set him on the move, but that's a really nice weather here in second as well. Blue Sheep here in third is one that is just extremely complete in terms of the way he's built. He's really good on his feet and legs. He's really balanced and attractive. Any angle you get on this sheep, you like him in terms of the way he's made. That said, when you get your hands on him, there's just not quite as much there as we had in the pair that stood ahead of him. Not quite as much dimension at the base of his shoulder, not quite as much width edge to edge from that last rib back, not quite as much shape in the lower third of his leg. I think we've got a sheep here that certainly is adequate in terms of muscularity, really good in terms of balance, maybe just not quite as stout, not quite as wide and expressive as the two that stood ahead of him, but a really nice weather there in third as well. And then a pair in fourth and fifth that I think are pretty similar. A pair that, first of all, you'd like to make them handle just a notch better from that last rib back. You'd like to get that loin edge up in them and just smooth them up and freshen them up at the hip-loin transition a bit as we compare them to the sheep that stood ahead of them. Both of these sheep are really big and open from hooks to pins, and I appreciate that about them. They carry their width to the ground extremely well in terms of base. They're a pair of sheep maybe that get just a little deeper up through their front end as we compare them to the front to the three that stand ahead of them. I think when you get into this pair, the extra length that we've got in this one here in fourth, the extra shape that he's got right at the base of his shoulder gives him the edge in this pair of really nice weathers in fourth and fifth. From there, we start working into some sheep maybe that get a little shorter, that get a little plainer in terms of muscularity, don't quite have the shape that we've got in some of these top sheep, but I think a really deep class. Kids did a great job. Let's give them a round of applause if you would.
Entry now is our Class 3 of lightweight lambs. They will come in from 131 to 134. And after this lightweight class, we'll be making the selection of your lightweight division. Do note, we will not know the overall winner until this afternoon's final drive, which gets underway at 3:30 this afternoon in the Beef Arena. Here's your results coming out of Class 2. Blue ribbon winners include Gavin Root from the Central City FFA, Sean Cavanaugh from Syracuse Dunbar Avoca FFA, Shaylee Sanderson from the Pender FFA, Hadley Picorni from the Wheeler Central FFA, Melanie Korth from the Blair FFA, Josie Root from the Central City FFA, and Sydney Patzel from the Newman Grove FFA. Purple ribbon winners include Leah Lambert from the Crawford FFA, Ella Crumblis from the Sandy Creek FFA, and to Wyatt Envelson from the Beatrice FFA. Second purple exhibited by Jordan Mussel from the Wilbur-Claytonia FFA, and first purple will go to Jalen Clement from the Central FFA.
Well, another really nice, really challenging class. This top pair gives me a little bit of difficulty. If we're judging blindfolded, it's easy. You know, there's no question. If we don't study sheep on the move and we don't study sheep from every angle, this one that wins easy. That's the biggest top, the biggest hip, the widest constructed one that we've seen today. Just massive at the base of his shoulder, really big and expressive, working down his top through his rack and loin. Certainly opened up and just three-dimensional when you get on top of him and out through his hip. He's just tremendous there. I don't love him when we set him on the move. He's a sheep that maybe gets just a little more opened up in his shoulder. And, you know, when you have that kind of caboose, you got to have that kind of engine, and that's just part of it. I'd like to clean him up there just a little bit and take that shoulder out of him, but we're getting picky on one that sure has a lot of good about him. If we could take the front end of this one and put it on that one, we'd have a sheep that we'd be talking about later for sure. That's one that's, from a design standpoint, is awfully good. Doesn't have as much product as the sheep that stands ahead of him. Certainly when you get on the three-quarter view, he just doesn't have as much upper hip. He doesn't have as much shape right through the center of his leg as we have in the sheep that beats him. He's not as full and not as expressive at the base of his shoulder and working back through his loin. But again, we're getting picky on one that I think is an awfully good sheep standing in this second hole. If he had just a tick more power, it would have made that top pair really tough for me to sort through. That's an awful good one as well. A pair in third and fourth that I think are similar in a lot of ways. We've got more muscle on this one in third. When we set him on the move, I want to drop his top. That's the biggest issue for me, is he just gets up in his spine. He's a little higher loin. You can see it even when we're sitting out here on the drive. We just want to drop his spine and just ease him up in terms of the way he gets around the ring when we set him on the move. I think when you compare the two, he's got more expression, he's got more shape, he's got more width when you come riding behind him than the sheep that stands fourth in this particular class. And he does have that extra length of side, which may be part of his issue with that top getting up just a tick more than we like. I love his elevation up in his front third. I think compositionally, he's about where we want him in terms of condition, in terms of handle and freshness. That's a really nice weather in third as well. And then just a complete balanced kind of a sheep here that for me, from his last rib back, we just want to freshen him up. He's a sheep that doesn't handle quite as deep and quite as full from that last rib back. His hip loin transition isn't as fresh and as deep and as true as some of those sheep that stood ahead of him. But boy, this is a big-footed, stout-made one. When he first walks in, this is a sheep you think, this one's a player, this one's in contention, and he is, without a doubt. It's when you handle him that he's just not quite as fresh, not quite as expressive as some of those sheep that stood ahead, but a really nice weather there in the fifth hole as well. And then we get into the sheep in fifth is probably, from a profile standpoint, as picturesque as any of them out here. Just beautiful from the side. It's right here is where he falls out. He just gets flatter in terms of his forerib. He gets flatter and shallower in terms of his leg and his stifle as we compare him to the sheep that stand ahead. But I love the design on this one, and certainly one that's built like that needs to be up in the top part of the class. Good set here. Congratulations to these exhibitors.
Okay. Bringing back our purple 1 and 2s out of our lightweight divisions to make our selection of our division champions. Again, the division will compete this afternoon starting right around 3:30 during the final drive. So purple 1, purple 2s for the lightweights. Here's the results coming out of Class 3. Blue ribbon winners include Corinne Kavanaugh from the Syracuse Dunbar Avoca FFA, Maggie Roberts from Nebraska City FFA, Taylor Staben from Elmwood Murdoch FFA, Grant Mussel from the Wilbur Claytonia FFA, Seth Wart from the Central City FFA, and Grace Mitchell from the O'Neill FFA. Purple ribbon winners will include Erica Donahue from Central FFA, Taya Hamilton from the Nebraska Ag Academy, Ava Karnoff from the West Point FFA. Second purple was exhibited by McKenna Ratchie from the Adams Central FFA, and first purple went to Hayden Schroeder from the Wisner Pilger FFA. And as you can see lined up out of Class 1, First place was Hayden Schroeder from Wisner Pilger. Second, exhibited by Grant Muscle from Wilbur Claytonia. Class 2 lightweights, Jalen Clement from the Central FFA. Second was to Jordan Muscle from Wilbur Claytonia. Out of lightweight class number 3, first place went to Hayden Schroeder from Wisner Pilger, and your second place from class 3 is McKenna Ratchie from Adams Central.
Well, what a great way to start the Market Lamb Show with this lightweight division. Let's give these exhibitors a round of applause, if you would, and help me. Lots of depth. You know, those classes didn't have huge numbers, 10 or 12, but boy, to get 2 out of each of those classes that are this caliber and this quality back out here in the Champion Drive bodes for a fun day, I think, in terms of sorting market lambs. We won't spend a lot of time talking about the lambs. I thought we had a pair of lightweights that were awfully good out of Class 1, a pair that went together well. When you put your hands on them, they sort. We've got one that's just ultra fresh and ultra shapely down his top that won that particular class. Tremendous in his outline, really leveled down his top and opened up out his hip, big-footed and stout and wide. Just an awfully good market lamb. The lamb that was second behind him is not quite as firm, not quite as fresh from his last rib back, but similar in terms of build and design to our class winner. Out of the middleweight class, or the Class 2 here, we had a sheep that won the class that was just a notch more complete in my mind in terms of the way he handled his feet and legs, the way he holds himself together in his lines, in his top line when we set him on the move. Big hipped kind of a sheep, maybe not quite as full and fresh when you handle him down his top as some of the sheep that we've seen, but a design kind of a sheep that you just really have to appreciate. A little deeper sided and deeper fronted kind of sheep was second in that class, but one that's just massive in terms of shape and dimension and volume of muscle, and you really appreciated that. The third class here, we had a sheep that won that class, and we talked about this probably as expressive and as explosive in terms of muscle shape as anything that we've seen. Just big racked and big loined. One that you love on the 3/4 view. We talked about his flaw is that he maybe gets just a little coarser through his front end and a little deeper up through his chest, but one that I still think balances nicely when we prop him up out here, and you really appreciate the muscle and the shape that that one has. The sheep that was second behind him, when he kind of gets on the brace, probably is one that balances up just a tick better. Another one that handles really fresh, really full, and really expressive down his top. I think an awfully good pair out of that class. I think there's 3 out here that are similar that combine the design that I like to find for the most part, but they combine that with muscle and shape, just really fresh and really expressive in terms of the way that they handle. I think they're the three most complete ones out here, and that's going to be the tone of the day for me, is trying to find those that are built right, that are really complete. Obviously, when I get on the three-quarter view, they have to be opened up from hooks to pins. They have to be wide-based and have some shape through the center of the leg to suit me, and I think we've got three that probably just do that a notch better out here in this drive. Y'all congratulate them for me one more time. I'll show you the three that suit me in this drive.
So coming out of the first class, your first and second exhibited by Hayden Schroeder from Wisner Pilger, and your third place is to McKenna Ratchie from Adams Central. Again, they will compete for the final drive coming up this afternoon at 3:30. In the ring now, we start our middleweights. This is middleweight class number 135 to 136.
Well, a nice class to start our middleweights, and I think a deep class in terms of quality. That said, there may not be that one that just comes in here and just says, I've got to be the one to win. On the move and on the profile, this one here kind of checks a lot of those boxes for me, the one that we start with. And I would tell you that each of these three that I've got in the top three have probably been in first place at one point in my mind as we sorted through them. There's some handle things with each of these that I want to change and just make each of them handle maybe just a little fuller and a little fresher. But, I think they're all, if you peel the hide off these three sheep, I would venture to say there's very little difference in total volume of muscle from one end to the other. So as I sort that out in my mind, I start to look at all the other aspects and find the one that just puts the most together in terms of structural integrity, in terms of feet and legs, in terms of skeletal design and look and balance, and the weather that we start with does that. This thing is good from any angle. Love him on the move, love him on the brace. He's a sheep that opens up really nicely in his upper hip, maintains his width, whether we've got him moving or whether we've got him stopped down through his hock and to the ground. Big square rack in this one. I want to fix his loin. I want to get that loin edge up in him and just get a little more width and depth there when you handle him. But, we fix that. I think he wins the class pretty nicely, in my opinion. I think this is one that's built just really well from an overall design standpoint. He's got the extra length of side and extra elevation over the sheep here in second. Sheep in second's ultra stout. And I think in terms of foot and bone, this one suits me extremely well. He's really big and expressive in his rack as well. Same issue from his last rib back. I'd like to freshen him and just get a little more handle there. If he was a notch longer sided, I think this whole thing gets really close between 1 and 2 in this particular class, because those are the two that are shallower ribbed, got better turn to their forerib to give me just a notch better look from the side. That's a really good weather there in second. I do like that extra length of side that we've got on this one here in third. I thought when we get him on the move and when we get him out here brace, he's probably the one that falls out of balance the most. And I'm not saying that he's not a really nice balanced type sheep. He's just not as tall fronted. He's not as smooth in terms of the way his blade lays in him as the two that stand ahead. And then you get on the three-quarter view with this one. He is the one that's the flattest through the center of his leg, carries that funnels down towards his hock more than the other two when we get on that three-quarter view. This one's got a nice touch and handle in his rack as well. Same issue from his last rib back. I just need to fix the loin in each of these top three to really feel comfortable with one moving up and winning the class nicely. But I thought it was a really nice top three. And then we got a sheep here in fourth that I thought was awfully nice as well. When he gets out on the move and when we get on the three-quarter view, he is the flattest in his forerib. He is the narrowest out through his pins that we had in the top four. He also is the one that's probably, just in terms of condition and composition, is probably the one that suits me as well as any in terms of the way he's conditioned, where he stands over his forerib, and the freshness that this one has in terms of muscle texture. I just need a little more of it as we compare him to the sheep that stood ahead. Good set here. Congratulations to these exhibitors.
Sent into the ring will be our middleweight class number 2 from 137 to 139. Results coming out of class 1 of our middleweights. Blue ribbon winners include Liam Paper from the Pender FFA, Kaylee Wagsden from York FFA, Kaylee Gach from the Loop City FFA, and Kaylee Patzel from the Newman Grove FFA. Purple ribbon winners will include Kaylee Eisenmeyer from the Ogallala FFA, Lauren Richards from the Shickley FFA, Josie Root from the Central City FFA, Erica Donahue from the Central FFA. Second purple exhibited by Colton Byrne from the Riverside FFA, and first purple goes to Colburn Clausen from the Cambridge FFA. Again, middleweight class number 2 is now in the ring.
Another really nice class of middleweight crossbred wethers over here. The sheep that wins a class, I think, does so nicely for me. And not taking anything away from this top pair. I think that was a nice pair that were really balanced, that were really attractive, kind of sheep that are big-hipped and stout. Certainly good in terms of their rib design, big and square and expressive down their top. You get in behind the wether that wins it, he just overpowers the one in second in terms of upper hip, in terms of shape, or right there across the plane of his stifle. I think as he goes away, he's the sheep that wins it for me as he maintains that width extremely well at his base and to the ground. Really like the way he handles his feet and legs at the surface for one that's got this much power. One that's compositionally correct, that handles really good. Just a nice wether to start this particular class. We probably got just a notch extra length aside. We're probably just a tick smoother in terms of the way the blade lays in this one, and I really like that about him. Just out here on profile, it's closer in my mind than it probably really is. This one's put together extremely well. And you study him right here. He's got a good turn in terms of that center leg, and I like to get on that view and see that in him. I think he flattens out just a tick more towards his hock, and again, as he goes away, he's the narrow tracking of the top two. Handle him down his top, big, square, expressive. Probably got a notch more condition on him than our class winner does, but he really is acceptable there. Not a question in my mind of whether we're getting just a little bit soft. He's still really fresh and really firm in terms of his touch and handle. I just want to open him up underneath and get his skeleton opened up a tick compared to our class winner. That's a really good wether in second. I thought an awfully nice pair to start the class with. The pair coming up next, I thought were relatively close as well. A pair of sheep that are big and expressive in their rack. Pair of sheep that have got big hips in them when you get on this three-quarter view. You study them from hooks to pins, really wide and really expressive in their upper hip and across the center of their leg. Maybe not quite as smooth in terms of their design and in terms of their handle as the two that stood ahead of them today, but the extra length that we've got in this darker pelted wether, the smoothness that he's got in terms of his hip-loin transition gives him the edge over this lamb here in fourth. The lamb in fourth's a tick taller fronted, and I really like that about him. When this sheep walked in, he's one that you like on the move, that catches your attention pretty quick. I just think he gets a little more raw in terms of his handle, not quite as full, not quite as fresh in terms of the way he handles down his top as these sheep that stand ahead of him. He's getting picky again on a really nice pair of sheep here in third and fourth. And then the young man sheep in fifth, I told him this one's got as much muscle as anything in the class without a question. Big topped and big ended. He just gets a little round off both ends of his skeleton for me. He wants to drop from hooks to pins. He gets out in his shoulder a tick more. You peel the hide off this one, there's lots of carcass merit in that sheep. Just doesn't balance up quite as good when we set him on the hoof. Good set. Congratulations.
Entering the ring now will be our middleweight class number 3 from 140 to 143 in weight. After this class, we'll be making the selection of the divisions. And of course, we'd like to welcome Dr. Jeff Ripley back into our show ring today. Recently retired, he has been the Associate Director for County Operations with Texan M AgriLife Extension Service. Jeff enjoys judging livestock shows and has judged across the country, including the Houston Livestock Show, the American Royal, the Dixie National, Oklahoma Youth Expo, Tulsa State Fair of Texas, Iowa State Fair, Fort Worth Livestock Show, and numerous state fairs, including here at Nebraska. His regional, county, and local shows as well. He and his wife, Tina, live in Franklin, where they own and operate a hardware store. They have 4 children, all of whom participated in the Junior Livestock Program within Texas, and they've got 1 grandchild who is next up to hit the show ring. Of course, welcoming once again Dr. Jeff Ripley, our judge today. The results out of middleweight class 2. Blue ribbon winners include Jackson Blomstedt from the McCook FFA, Troy Maxacuda from the Pleasanton FFA, Daphne Jedlichka from the Lee FFA, Melanie Korth from the Blair FFA, and Natalie Papernick from the Ord FFA. Purple ribbon winners include Callie Collins from the Northwest FFA, Kenzie Ward from the Central City FFA, and Kyle Riak from the Wisner Pilger FFA. Your second purple went to Preston Bobenmeyer from the McCook FFA, and first purple, congratulations to Kayla DeZee from the Westholt FFA.
Really, really nice class. I don't apologize for taking just a little bit longer here, because easily the deepest class we've seen. And, as you would expect, we're at that weight and that maturity where these things are getting really, really good. And this top three is, I think, a really competitive top three, but they're three sheep that are not just alike. And you've got to really study, and it can be a little bit of a head scratcher as you're out here sorting through these sheep. There's qualities in each of these sheep that I definitely appreciate. The sheep that when he walks in that you just fall in love with on the move, that you love on the profile, is the sheep that we're ultimately going to lead off the class with. Big-footed, stout-made, wide-based, opened up, really attractive kind of sheep to start with. I think when you get on the three-quarter view and you study upper hip, he's as big-hipped as the sheep that stand in behind him. He certainly, when you handle him down his top, is as big-racked, as big-loined, and as fresh in terms of his handle as anything that stands behind him. He's the most compositionally correct up in the very top end of the class in my mind. Where it gets close for me and where I really have to study is, does he have quite enough pop and expression right across that stifle? Is he quite as expressive and bulgy enough in that lower third? And, that's a question that you have to answer for yourself. I think he's got all these other pieces and then enough product to go along with it that one's just really complete and pretty hard to turn in this particular class in my mind. If you're just handling them, you've got to love this one, the one here in second. This sheep is as massive, as opened up, as stout as any of them. Really, really big center bodied. Appreciate that about this sheep. He's a sheep that when we get him propped up right here, and this young lady gets him propped up extremely well, he looks great on the profile. It's when we set him on the move that I say, is he quite good enough in terms of his front end, in terms of his shoulder, in terms of the front third of his skeleton? No question, he's good enough from that forerib back in terms of width and dimension. I want one that maybe just puts a little more together up in that front end for me to move up and win the class. I really like this wether. I think he's one, even though he doesn't look just like our class winner, I think he's one that sure gets into contention, and we look at a little later on. That's a really nice wether. Maybe not quite as smooth in terms of the handle with this next one coming up. There's a lot of pieces of this one that he does extremely well. He is tall-fronted. He is smooth-shouldered. He is one that presents himself good on the move. It's when you come in and handle him that maybe he's not quite as full, he's not quite as fresh, he's not quite as deep and wide from edge to edge in his loin as those two that stand ahead of him. Get on the three-quarter view, you love him. He's really opened up from hooks to pins. He's nice across the plane of that stifle. And again, just study him here and that forerib and the turn that he's got in his lower rib and the shallowness that he's got from the side. I really appreciate a lot of things about this one. If we change his handle quality just a nickel, I think it gets really interesting with him maybe moving up a notch in this particular class, because from a profile standpoint, he probably does look more like our class winner than the one that stood between him in second. So, but a really nice wether there in third. Probably get just a little plainer in terms of handle with the next one coming up here. He is, of our top end, he's the most in terms of condition. He's carrying more cover. He's the softest handling of our very top end of this class. This is one, though, that you study him from a skeletal design standpoint. Really good on his feet and legs. Really attractive up in his front end. Lots of width, lots of dimension. I just need to take some condition off, change his handle just a tick to let him move up further. And we round out our top five with a really balanced, really attractive one that is the lightest muscled and the narrowest of the top five. But that's the top five of the deepest class we've seen. This is a dang good wether. He just doesn't have as much muscle as those that stood ahead of him today in this particular class. When you study him and you analyze end to end, we just need a little more pop in him today. Good set. Congratulations to these guys. Let's give them a round of applause.
Give these kids just a moment to step out of the ring, bring them back in for our first and second purples from each one of our middleweight classes to select our division winners. Here's your results coming out of Class 3. Blue ribbon winners include Annabelle Vennerme from Chadron FFA, Shaylee Sanderson from the Pender FFA, Sydney Patzel from the Newman Grove FFA, Alea Peppernick from the Ord FFA, Cameron Dizee from the Westholt FFA, Brendan Karkowski from the Loop City FFA, Brendan also had another blue there. Purple ribbon winners include Brendan Karkowski from the Loop City FFA, Joe Kavanaugh from the Syracuse Dunbar Avoca FFA, Lexi McCaffrey from the Crete FFA, Emily Muntz from the Elwood Murdoch FFA, Hayden Schroeder with the Wisner Pilger FFA. Purple 2 goes to Jada Clement from the Central City FFA, and first purple out of Class 3. Congratulations to Colburn Clausen from the Cambridge FFA. As you see them lined up now in the ring in the middleweight class, Class 1 first place was to Colburn Clausen from Cambridge FFA. Second middleweight Class 1 was to Colton Burnt from the Riverside FFA. Into your middleweight Class 2, first place was Cale DeZee from West Holt FFA, and second place Preston Bobenmeyer from McCook FFA. Middleweight Class 3 that just wrapped up, first goes to Colburn Clausen from the Cambridge FFA, and second went to Jada Clement from the Central FFA.
Let's give these kids a big round of applause, our middleweight division. What a fun set of sheep to sort through these were in these three classes from end to end in each of those classes. I thought we had depth and quality particularly in the very top end of those classes. And by, the amount of purple ribbons that we gave out in a couple of those classes, no question, the depth was tremendous in my mind in some of these classes. Just a tremendous set of sheep in the middleweight division. And, as I said earlier, we're starting to get to the point where they should be mature enough and they should start to handle with the right kind of shape and everything should be coming together. They don't look like teenagers anymore. They're starting to look like men that we get out here in this weather show, and we've got some out here that do that extremely well. But they're still really youthful. They're still really fresh, and that's important to me as we sort and we get some of these sheep to the top. I think out of our lightweight class, we talked about those two sheep were pretty similar from a skeletal design standpoint. We had more length of side in the sheep that won it, but both of these sheep were tremendous on their feet and legs. Both are really good in terms of their rib and the way that they handle their top line, the way they present themselves on the move. Probably had just a tick more shape at the base of the shoulder and that extra length of side on the sheep that won that particular class, but I thought a really nice pair out of the first class in the division. The second class in the division division. We talked about those sheep being similar from a design standpoint, but that's where the similarities ended. When you put your hands on them, the sheep that won it just had more power and product, particularly when you get right behind him. He's got more shape across the center of his stifle, more width as he goes to the ground. That one had lots of power, just a really nice one, I thought, to win that second class very nicely. And then the class that we just finished, a super deep class with the top 5 or 6 in there that I thought were really, really good. We had a pair to win that maybe don't look just exactly alike, but there's a lot of similarities from a skeletal design standpoint in these two, and even more similarities when you put your hands on them and you find the width and the shape that they have down their top. I like that extra extension and elevation in the front third of the wether that won over the wether that was second, but I thought they were pretty close in terms of total volume of muscle and a lot of the extras that we look for in terms of feet and legs, in terms of levelness and squareness from behind. Those two were outstanding in that particular class. We're going to get 3 out of this division to come back for our champion drive, but I think all 6 of these are outstanding. Let's give them a round of applause, and I'll show you the 3 I like the best.
There, but that's the calf that's got the big rear end. He's got the stout noggin on the other end, and he's got the big arm and the big feet. So, I think he just kind of.
Are you waiting for her to?
Top based on that substance of that.
Entering now is our final group of classes. This is heavyweight class number 1.
The calf that we got here in seconds, the other one I really admire.
Our heavyweights weigh 144 to 145. We do have new this year U classes. They'll be coming up, but this is the last groupings of our crossbred market lambs. Representing the middleweights in the final drive this afternoon at 3:30 will include first to Coben Clayson from the Cambridge FFA, second went to Jada Clement from the Central FFA, and third to Countess Eve of the Westholt FFA.
Another extremely deep class in our heavyweight division of our market weathers over here. Boy, a lamb that wins it that I think is just a really complete one. When this one hits the gate, he catches your attention. You think, that one's going to be in the hunt. He is so attractive from the side. He's so tall-fronted. He's so good in terms of his rib design and his feet and legs, his head and neck placement when he's on the move. And you think to yourself, I hope he has enough muscle. And then you come in and you handle him, and he's got enough muscle. This thing's got a big square top in him. He's expressive in terms of the way he handles down his top. He's fresh and youthful in terms of his touch. Really good on this three-quarter view in terms of upper hip, in terms of width across his stifle, one that maintains his width extremely well. This one's been in the lead in this class for a long time, in my opinion. That's a nice weather to start this particular class. Pure handle quality, it's hard to beat this one in second when you come in and handle them. And that's where you study them just a little more, because this thing is massive and square and fresh and firm, really ripped in terms of the shape that he's got down his top. He's every bit as opened up and as good across his stifle as the sheep that stands right ahead of him in class. He just has a tick more shoulder. He's not quite as deep in terms of his rear flank. He's not quite as shallow in terms of his heart. So he doesn't have quite the extra bells and whistles that we have in our class winner. That's getting pretty picky on one that I think's a good one. This is an awfully good weather that worked up into the top pair very, very nicely in my mind. Follows that class winner, I think, extremely well. Weather here in third was one that, when we're on that rear view, I glanced down the line and I saw that one kind of sticking out, and I said, oh, boy, there's a good one. That thing's got a great turn in terms of his center and lower third of his leg. He stays extremely shallow up through his front end. He's one that you like when we set him on the move. Another one that handles his feet and legs extremely well. Probably not quite as extended in terms of his skeleton as the two that stand ahead of him, but when you handle him, he's not quite as fresh. He's not quite as full. He's not quite as good from his last rib back as those two that stand ahead of him. I think he's one that if he were just a notch better from his last rib forward, he's probably one notch up in this class, because I think from a design standpoint, he might suit me just a tick better in terms of the shallowness that he has and the way his front end's designed. That's a really good weather standing in third. The sheep in fourth is one that when you set him on the move, you really like him. He's good on his feet and legs. He's one that stays good in his lines when we set him on the move. When you handle him, he gets a little less descript. He's the softest that we've got in the very top end of the class in terms of his forerib. Maybe not quite as expressive when you work back through his loin. Sheep's got a big stand-up rack in him, and I appreciate that about him. But then you get on the three-quarter view and compare him to the three that stood ahead of him. He is the one that wants to narrow the most and taper the most from hooks to pins up in the very top end of our class. I don't think he maintains his width through his stifle and down through his hock and to the ground as well as those three that stood ahead of him. But boy, this is one that's center body width, that's stoutness at the ground, has a lot of things that you really appreciate. Another really nice weather standing here in fourth. And then the young ladies' weather in fifth is one that just gets a little out of balance when we get him out there in the very top end. He cuts up in his flank just a tick. He's not quite as good in terms of the way he handles down his top. I'd like to drop his dock just a bit and level him when you study him down his top, both on the brace and on the move, and just balance him a tick more from the side. From that standpoint, this sheep's got a tremendous amount of shape and expression in his rack, one that handles awfully good from the base of his shoulder back through his loin. I think when you get behind him, he's similar to the sheep that stands ahead in that he wants to narrow just a bit and get maybe just a little flatter through the center of his leg as we compare him to the sheep that place ahead of him. But another really good, high-quality weather in the top five here. Congratulations to these kids on a good set.
Entering the ring now will be heavyweight class number 2, coming in at 150 to 152 in weight. The results out of class 1, blue ribbon winners include Kaylee Gach from the Loop City FFA, Macy Ranchi from Adams Central FFA, Kenzie Wirt of Central City FFA, Addison Fauch with the EMF FFA, and Taylor Shawn, from AM FFA. Looking at our purple ribbon winners include Josie Johnson from Palmyra FFA, Jillian Muntz from the Elmwood Murdoch FFA. Lexi McCaffrey from the Crete FFA. And to Kyle Riak from the Wisner Pilger FFA. Second purple went to Keegan Kirshner of the Sutherland FFA. And first purple is to Erica Donahue from the Central FFA.
Another exceptional class of market weathers over here in our heavyweight division. In my mind, this pair was never out of the top two from early on in terms of handle quality, in terms of skeletal design, in terms of completeness and look and balance. These two worked their way to the top of the class early and stayed there for me. There was a time or two that I may have had this pair switched in my mind on a couple of minor details, but in the end, when you study and you look at the complete package, the weather that we start with just offers me a little more in terms of that look and balance from the side. As he goes away, he's as wide at the surface as anything in the class, big and expressive in his rack and his loin, stout in terms of his foot and bone work. And again, he combines that with that extra length, that extra extension, that extra height at the point of his shoulder that just makes him balance up just a tick better. And to me, checks a few more boxes in terms of completeness. That's a really good weather to start with. I'm not going to take anything away from this one in second. Every bit as much muscle and power and freshness and shape when you handle him down his top. Love that about him in terms of the way he handles at his rack and back through his loin. Another one, when we set him on the move, he still wants to run uphill. He still wants to balance up nice and stay right in his lines and his rear flank. Gives up a little bit of length to the sheep that stands ahead of him. As he goes away, he may not have quite as much expression down low as the sheep that stands ahead of him, but it gets really close in my mind. You know, when you just come in and handle him, this sheep gets really close to moving up and winning the class because he does handle so good and so fresh. I think that's a really nice top pair to start this particular class with. I think we fall off just a little bit, but we've still got some quality down here as we work through in terms of depth in this particular class. We're not quite as fresh in terms of the handle with this one that comes next in class. But here's another one that from a skeletal design standpoint, study him the way he's made up in his forerib, the way he's made down his top line, the way he's made out his hip. This one's built right. Really wide in terms of his base, really expressive out through his rack. Again, not quite as fresh from his last rib back in terms of his handle, but I like the composition on this one in terms of where we are finish-wise, certainly over the one that stands right behind him. And I think just from an overall design standpoint, he stays better in his lines. He's better in the front third of his skeleton than the next one. This next one is massive, huge top, huge racked, and I really appreciate that about him when you put your hands on him. He is carrying just a tick more condition than the three that stand ahead of him, but for me, where he comes out is when we set him on the move. He gets to be the narrowest at the surface, coming together at his hock, wants to drop that front end a little more for me when we set him out here on the move, but still certainly a quality weather. Sheep here in fifth is one that as we get into the very top end, this one checks lots of boxes from a completeness standpoint. He just runs out of gas when it comes to muscle and power and width compared to the very top end, but that's a really good weather in a really deep class. Congratulations to these kids on a nice set.
Set to come in now will be class 3 of 4 of our heavyweights. Your results out of class 2 momentarily. Heavyweight class number 3 will come in 153 to 157. Your class 2 heavyweight blue ribbon winners will include Brendan Karkowski from the Loop City FFA, Alex Meyer from the Elm Creek FFA, Alexander Kayat from the Wilcox Hildreth FFA, Friendly Albert from the Blue Hill FFA, Ebony Tribe from the Sandy Creek FFA, Corinne Kavanaugh from the Syracuse Dunbar Avoca FFA. Purple ribbon winners, Keaton Fadig from the Brady FFA, Grace Mitchell from O'Neill FFA, Allison Vavicek from the Schuyler Central FFA, Kimberly Swishaw from the Meridian FFA. Purple 2 went to Kyle Rehak from the Wisner Pilger FFA. And first purple out of class number 2. Congratulations to Taya Hamilton of the Nebraska Ag Academy.
Well, another super class in this heavyweight division. I think a sheep that wins a class, it just does so nicely for me. This one is one that's pretty complete in terms of skeletal design, in terms of the way that he handles. Easily the most compositionally correct sheep in the class, really good in terms of condition over his forearm. He's fresh, he's youthful in terms of touch today. He's a sheep that he's not the longest sided, but he's balanced. He's long enough sided. And when you study him, the comparison that we've got from rear flank to foreflank is something that you really appreciate. He really is good in that rear flank. He's deep and full, really shallow and attractive up in his foreflank and his forerib, dead level down his top, opened up and expressive in his upper hip and across the center of his stifle. That's just an awful nice weather to start this particular class. Hard to knock too many holes in him from a skeletal design standpoint, from a handle quality standpoint, from a composition standpoint. He checks a lot of boxes for me in this particular heavyweight class. I think the sheep that comes in right behind him, sure, he's a notch longer sided, and I appreciate that about him. He is getting just a little softer and a little less expressive in terms of his handle today as we compare him to the sheep that wins it. I need to stouten him just a bit in terms of foot and bone size. He's got plenty of wool, but I want a little more under that wool, just a little more foot and bone size in him compared to the weather that wins the class today. But that's still a really nice weather there in second. The one coming up next in third is carrying the most condition of our top end. He gets just a little softer for me. He's the one that when he walks in, he catches your eye pretty quick. This one is tall-fronted, he's long-sided, he's shallow-hearted. Lots of good things from a design standpoint. But when you break him down and you try to find true width and you try to find true dimension, he just runs out compared to the two that stand ahead of him. He's not as full and expressive down his top. He's not as opened up with genuine width in his upper hip. He doesn't have quite as much shape across the plane of his stifle as those two that stand ahead of him. While I love him from the side and I love his design, I don't think there's quite as much genuine muscle in him today and as much correctness in terms of condition as we have in that top two. Still a really nice weather that definitely needs to be in the very top end. And then the blue sheep is one that handles tremendous. Big top, square and expressive down his top. He just gets to be the one that gets out of balance the most in our top four. Gets the deepest through his front, kind of wants to run downhill. I want to elevate him and just flip him a little bit in terms of his pattern to make him balance just a notch better from the side. He could use a tick more length aside, flank to suit me better, but I love him when you get on this view right here. He's really opened up from hooks to pins, and again, fresh and expressive in terms of the way he handles down his top, and that's where he gets around most of the sheep that follow him in class is just handle quality today. This one's got a big top that's really right in terms of condition. Lots of good things with this weather here. Weather coming up in fifth is one that when we got up in the very top end, to me, got to be the narrowest from hooks to pins and the flattest across the center of his leg as we compared him to some of those that stood ahead of him today in this particular class. He's another one that you like from the side. I think he balances up nice, just not quite as much power and product in him as we had in the very top of the class. Good set here, though. Congratulations.
Entering now is our final heavyweight class for our weathers before we jump into our U classes. Heavyweight class number 4 from 158 to 182. Your results coming out of class number 3. Your blue ribbon winners include Peyton Eisenhower from the Bloomfield FFA and Sean Carson from AM FFA. Purple ribbon winners will be Avery Reuter from the Scottsbluff FFA, Haley Dowding from the Palmyra FFA, Clara Johnson from the Palmyra FFA, Tavira Veras from the Thayer Central FFA, Alex Meyer from the Elm Creek FFA, Jacob Chesbera from the Wilcox Hildreth FFA, Purple 2 exhibited by Lexi McCaffrey from the Crete FFA, and congratulations, your first purple out of heavyweight class 3, William Skabinski of the Ord FFA.
Well, another nice class of market weathers here. Two weathers to start this class that do so early and do so easily for me in terms of where we are from a freshness and youthfulness standpoint. They're just easily the freshest, the most youthful pair that we've got in the class in terms of handle. Really good and square and expressive down their top. Correct in terms of composition for the weight where we are, and they're still sheep that are good on their feet and legs, that are wide based, that are opened up, that offer some power and some expression of muscle. The sheep that wins it certainly overpowers when you get right in behind him. He's just got more shape through the center of his leg today than the lamb that stands right behind him. I think he stays better in his lines. He drops a little more rear flank. He stays a little shallower and more attractive up in his front end today than the sheep here in second, but that's a really nice pair of really fresh, really youthful heavyweight lambs that certainly move up and get into this top pair easily for me, a nice pair. I think we got a lamb in third that you appreciate the muscle. This thing is just packed full of shape and expression down his top. He's another one that's conditioned correctly, and when you get over his rib, you can certainly live with where we are from a composition standpoint. I want to fix him out his hip. He wants to drop his tail just a bit and get up in his loin, and that changes his balance and his look for me, and that's where he needs to be fixed. But the muscle, the freshness, and the composition make this one stay up in the very top end of this class. That's a nice weather in his own right. And then the one coming up here in fourth is one that from a design standpoint you like better. He's leveler down his top. He's one that stays better in his lines, both on the move and on the prop. But when you come in and handle him, he's easily the heaviest condition one that we've got in the very top end of the class. I just need to lean him up to let him move up a notch in this particular class. But still a nice weather there in fourth as well. Good set. Congratulations.
We're set to bring in our first and second purples now for our heavyweight class to make that division selection. Again, the overall markets will take place this afternoon during the final drive. Your blue ribbon winners include Rosemary Krager from the Centennial FFA, Avery Ryder from the Scotts Bluff FFA, Noah Jelinek from the Waverly FFA, Allie Smith from the Sargent FFA, Spencer Gisbera from the Wilcox Hildreth FFA, Cameron Woda from the Bishop Newman FFA, and Troy Mack Sakatura from the Pleasanton FFA. Purple ribbon winners will include Micaiah De La Cruz from Lakeview FFA. Second purple went to Mason Stoddard from the Blair FFA, and first purple to Keegan Kirshner from the Sutherland FFA. As we bring our first and second purples in for the heavyweights, out of heavyweight class 1, first did go to Erica Donahue from the Central FFA. Second place was to Keegan Kirshner from Sutherland FFA. Heavyweight class number 2, first to Taya Hamilton from the Nebraska Ag Academy. Second place was to Kyle Riak from Wisner Pilger FFA. Heavyweight class 3, first place William Skabinski of the Ord FFA. Second place was to Lexi McCaffrey from the Crete FFA. And heavyweight class number 4, first place was to Keegan Kirshner from the Sutherland FFA. And second place went to Mason Stoddard from the Blair FFA.
Another outstanding division over here in our Market Lamb show with our heavyweight crossbred division. I think we've got a set of sheep out here that are just outstanding. And, you know, in each of those classes, we talked about having a nice pair to start with, but having one that logically moved into the first position for me as we went through those classes. And, you know, it's based on handle quality in many cases, just a notch better balance and a notch better look from the side in some of those sheep as we compared first and second in those classes. And as we get them back out here, that's kind of how I see them again. I think we've got a pair of lightweights that are the first class of our heavyweight division that are just really good. And we've got one that I thought won that class nicely. This thing is super balanced, really expressive and square down his top, really fresh and youthful in terms of his touch and his handle. He's wide-based. He's opened up. One that when you get in front of him is extremely good in his chest floor and the way his shoulder lays in him. It's a nice weather that won that particular class. We got in the second class, we had this sheep here that won it that's just absolutely beautiful from the side. One that when you get right behind him, probably, and we talked about it, isn't as opened up from hooks to pins as the sheep that he beat in class, but there was enough shape and handle down his top and enough look and balance that you sure needed to find him and let him move up and win that class, in my opinion. And when we get him out here, he kind of fits this lineup over here, in my mind, extremely well. The sheep that won the third class, or the pair that came out of the third class, were awfully good. They were a pair that I thought were youthful and shapely and fresh, but the one that won it did so extremely nicely for me. This one really wants to run uphill. He's big-hipped, he's big-topped, and one that's got a tremendous amount of shape, big-footed, and just a really stout one. He's another one, when we take that front view, so cracked open underneath, yet still so shallow up in his heart to have that much power and be this mature. That's a really nice one in this line over here as well. Out of our last class, we had two that were just easily the most compositionally correct. They were the most youthful in that particular class, and that's a nice pair of wethers. They're getting a little further along in terms of maturity, maybe not quite as youthful as some that we see out here, but still a nice pair of wethers out of that particular class. For me, it comes down, I don't think you get out of this front line as you look for your top three, and it comes down to finding those that maybe have just a little more in terms of that balance and look from the side, that maybe want to be just a little more up-fronted, open up just a little better from hooks to pins, and then you get that pair. There's one that just handles a little better from his last rib back. So I think we've got a pair that are champion and reserve in this division that are pretty similar in terms of the way they're made. One handles a little better. We got a third that falls into this division that I think is a really nice sheep that maybe doesn't quite have the power. Really good set. Let's congratulate these kids. I'll show you the three that I like the best in here.
Perfect. And congratulations, representing our heavyweights in this afternoon's final drive. First place heavyweight class 1 has Eric Donahue of Central FFA. Second place will go to William Skibinski from the Ord FFA. And wrapping up third will be Tay Hamilton from the Nebraska Ag Academy. Again, those will be selected during the final drive this afternoon at 3:30. Having a U market class is something new this year for our FFA members. Shortly, we'll be getting underway with our U class. And we're ready to get underway with our U side of our market class. U class number 1 will weigh from 101 to 130.
Well, nice class of ewes to start our crossbred ewe division in here. I think we've got a pair that work their way to the top that just have a little more to them in terms of width and in terms of muscularity today. The one that wins that pair is probably a little more correct in terms of her condition. She's probably just a tick fresher in terms of the way that she handles, particularly over her forerib. She's one that, for me, when you get this pair out here and you compare, I'd like to drop a little more flank in her to balance her just a tick. I'd like to drop her in her tail setting just a bit as we compare to some of the sheep in here. But she just handles with more true shape and dimension. She's a little more correct, again, over that forerib for me as compared to the one that stands right behind her. Giving up a little length of side here with this one for me as we compare to the blue sheep. I think there's give and take between those two, and I think they're really close. Lots of power in this sheep as well. She does get a little softer handling. I do like her, though, when you stand her out here and you study her in terms of just her line. She's a little deeper flank. She's a little shallower fronted. Probably balances a notch better there for me. Again, if we could change her handle just a bit, I think she probably moves up and wins the class. That was a close placing between 1 and 2. I think when we get into 3 and 4, they're similar as well. They're a pair of sheep that are balanced, that are attractive, that handle right, that are youthful and fresh in terms of their handle. Both of them give up some power to the two that stand ahead of them. And when you get on the 3/4 view, you can sort these two. The blue sheep is bigger hipped. She's got more width and expression across the middle of her leg, and she carries that down just a tick better towards the hock. I think she opens up better underneath in terms of her base than the sheep that's here in 4th. I love the handle of this one in 4th. She is full and fresh and expressive down her top. I just think she gets to be the narrowest based as you study her going away. Watch her at the surface as she walks away. She's just one that wants to get just a little narrow for me, and that translates into not quite as much expression through her stifle and lower third that we had in some of those above. And the same story for the next one. I think one that handles really good, that's got some balance and some look. I need to open this one up in her hip and just get more width and dimension up high in her as we compare to some of those that stood ahead. But another really good set here. Good start to our ewe lamb division. Congratulations.
This is our final class of ewes in the market class. Class 2 weighing from 135 to 161. Your results of Class 1. Blue ribbon winners include Hadley Bacorny from the Wheeler Central FFA, Cameron Kirchhoff, EMF FFA, Caitlin Kirchhoff from EMF FFA, Seth Ward from Central City FFA, Caitlin Kirchhoff from EMF FFA, Brendan Kirkowski from the Loop City FFA. Purple ribbon winners include Gavin Root from Central City FFA, Daphne Jelichka from the Lee FFA, Purple 2 exhibited by Ava Karnoff of the West Point FFA, and your first purple goes to Keaton Faddick from the Brady FFA.
Another nice class of market use. We get into our heavyweight. We've got one that wins it for me nicely. I just think this one is the most youthful. She's the freshest. She's the most correct in terms of condition. She's still a sheep that's tremendous in terms of width, in terms of skeletal dimension. When you study the top side of her and the width that she has working down her top, she's big-hipped and big-ended. She's good on her feet and legs. Just a really sound, productive kind of a female that I think fits into a market class really nicely. That's a good ewe lamb to start with. Same story with the next one coming up. She's a good bit bigger. She's a good bit heavier, but she's built the same way. She handles her feet and legs right. She, for as big as she is, still wants to be shallow and tall-fronted and attractive when you study her there. She's as opened up from hooks to pins. She's as nice as anything in here from that standpoint. She's not as fresh. She's not as youthful in terms of her handle as the sheep that beats her in class, but I think as you compare to the lambs that come in behind her, she's just got more power. She's got more structural integrity than some of these that place right behind her. That's a really nice female in her own right as well, falling into second. You know, when they first came in, I thought the sheep here in third was one that would be in contention, and the longer I study her, she is in contention, but the longer I study her, she's just a little straighter in terms of how she handles her back leg. She gets a little over in her knee at times and is a little straighter there. That makes her want to round out and not maybe balance quite as nicely as the two sheep that stand ahead of her from a structural standpoint. From a handle quality standpoint, easily falls into the top three. She's got more muscle, she's got more volume, she's got more shape than the sheep that come in behind her in class, and she's still fresh and youthful in terms of the way she handles. Love the design on this one here in fourth, and I think one that just from a skeletal integrity standpoint you appreciate. Awfully good on her feet and legs, really balanced when you study her from the side. She just runs out of gas when it comes to muscle. She's the flattest through the center of her leg. She's the flattest in her forerib that we had up here in the very top end of the class. Really lean though, really youthful in terms of her touch and handle. Just needed a shot of muscle to get ahead of any of those that stood right ahead of her in class. Another really good set of ewes here. Congratulations.
Our U division selection is now underway, representing the U class. First was to Keaton Fadick of the Brady FFA. Second was to Ava Carnup of West Point FFA. Our U class 2 is to Troy Mac Satura from the Pleasanton FFA, and second place was to Braden Wagson from the York FFA.
Y'all help me and put your hands together for our U exhibitors in this champion drive, if you would. Another nice set of sheep out here in the champion drive, and I think not huge numbers in those classes, but still depth and still some quality as we work through those to get these four back out here in the drive. And these are four nice individuals that we've got out here. I felt like in each of those classes, these two kind of separated from the rest of the class in terms of what they had to offer in muscularity and in correctness of finish and in balance and look and eye appeal and structural integrity. They just checked a lot of boxes for me in those classes. I think when we get them out here, there's probably three that are the freshest and the most youthful in terms of the way that they handle, in terms of the way that their foreribs laid in them today. I think they're probably three that have just a notch more shape and expression when you want to handle them down their top. And I think one of them's just a bit smoother when you study her from the side. I just think she ties a little better and wants to present herself in a little smoother package. So all of them are awfully good. These kids did a really good job exhibiting them and getting them to this point in this market show. I'm going to show you the three that suit me that we'll bring back in the champion drive this afternoon. Let's give them one more big round of applause, though, if you would.
And congratulations, headed to that final drive this afternoon. Trimac Sotura from the Pleasanton FFA and Keaton Fadick from the Brady FFA. In third for our market use was Ava Karnop of the West Point FFA. A new class this year for our FFAers. This is your hair breed influence market lambs. They weigh from 110 to 132.
A nice set of hair sheep in this particular division here. We've got a white Dorper that moves up and wins the class nicely for me. Just really powerful and shapely and expressive in terms of the muscle that he has to offer. Bold and open at the base of his shoulder. Really opened up from hooks to pins. Tremendous amount of base width in this one. Wins the class nicely and one that I think certainly could stand more competition out here today. That's an awfully good one. I think we got a ewe-lamb coming up next in class that you can appreciate as being structurally correct in terms of the way she handles her feet and legs. I think she's good in her lines when you study her there. I think when you come in behind these sheep and you just try to find the ones that open up the best from hooks to pins, she does that next best for me. She's the bigger hipped of the remaining sheep. Maybe one that I'd get a little more shape at the base of her shoulder, but still some quality in her as well. One that does have maybe just a notch more shape handling down his top is this speckled wether, spotted wether that's standing third. I'd like to take this one and just square level and open him up a bit in his upper hip, and that's where we would change him today. But when you put your hands on him, he's the one that's got more shape and expression at the base of his shoulder and working down his top than the sheep that come in behind him. I need to fix the rear legs on this one that stands fourth as much as anything today. She wants to come together at her hock just a bit more than I'd like to see today. She's very similar to the ewe that's second, except for the way she handles her rear legs. If we could change that, she's probably a sheep that moves up in this particular class because she is bold in the center of her body. She's attractive in terms of the way she's made in the front third of her skeleton. And then the black sheep coming up next is one that for me I need to fix out the hip. She just gets a little slope. She gets a little flatter when you study her right there. I think she's really attractive in the front third of her body, really good in terms of the way her shoulder lays in, the way her head and neck attach. I appreciate that about her a whole bunch. She's just one I need a little more muscle. I need a little more width when I come in right in behind her. But a good set here. Congratulations to these guys.
Another new for the Nebraska State Fair. As you saw, we had the hair breed influence. We'll get you those results in a moment. But also new this year is the Whiteface influence, having their own classes. But here's your results of your hair breeds. Blue ribbon winners include Kayla Borney from the Seward FFA and Joanna Borney from the Seward FFA. Purple ribbon winners are Kayla Borney from the Seward FFA, Purple 2 to Joanne Aborney of the Seward FFA, and first purple and your division champion is Arabella Rossmeyer from the Shelton FFA.
this calf is, without question, a shot thicker in his neck and chest, and so I wouldn't get him and clean him up there.
A nice set of south downs in this particular class. Maybe some things we'd change about each of them, but some things you appreciate, particularly in the very top end of this class. The most balanced, the most attractive is the young lady's lamb that we start with. Really good on his feet and legs, really stout in terms of his bone size. One that I think when you study him is tall at the point of his shoulder. He's expressive in terms of the way he handles down his top, big and open at his pins, and nice across the plane of his stifle. He's carrying a tick more condition than the sheep right behind him, but I think we're acceptable at this weight range and this level of maturity. That's just a nice, complete, balanced kind of a down to win this particular division. The one you probably like the best when you put your hands on him is the young ladies here in second. This one is expressive and massive in terms of the way he handles down his top. Love the turn he has in the center of his leg there as we compare him to some of the lambs behind him. I think as we compare him to the lamb that stood ahead of him, he gets a little more conventional up through his front end. He drops his breastplate just a bit and opens up his shoulder just a notch. I think they're similar in terms of total volume of muscle. I don't think he balances quite as nicely as the lamb that beats him in class, but that's a really nice pair, pretty different kind of sheep, but the two most complete ones in this particular class. Young man's lamb in third, I think, is one that follows along most closely in terms of muscle and in terms of overall type and kind. He gets a little straighter through his hock. He gets a little out in his knee, not quite as good in terms of his feet and leg structure off either end as we compare him to the two that stand ahead of him. I think he's one that when you come right in behind him probably narrows the most from hooks to pins in the very top end of the class, but he handles really fresh. He handles with some expression down his top, and I appreciate that about him as well. I think from there we get into three that fall out when you get right behind them. All three of these sheep just want to taper a bit more from hooks to pins, and that makes them get just a notch flatter right through the center of their leg. The sheep that comes in fourth is one that is extremely tall fronted, though, really good in terms of his forerib, handles really good in his rack. He's really fresh. If we could open him up out from hooks to pins, no question he moves up at least one notch in this class. That's a nice weather as well. Fifth and sixth, again, same kind of issue. We just want to get more width and more dimension when you come right in behind them. I think they're a pair of sheep that maybe weren't quite as fresh, not quite as expressive in terms of the way they handle down their top compared to the very top end of the class, but still nice weathers. This was a good set of south down weathers in this particular class. Congratulations.
Entering the ring now will be Class 2 of our Whiteface Influence Market Lambs.
Nice pair of Dorset appearing kind of weathers in this particular class. I think both of these sheep are maybe a little further along in terms of condition and maturity than I would consider ideal, but we've got one that's just got more muscle and width, and we'll start with him as a sheep that balances enough from the side for me. It gives you a good look. He's deep in that rear flank, stays shallow enough up through his chest floor, and you get in behind him. This is the one that's just stouter in terms of foot and bone, that's stouter in terms of hip and hind leg as we compare him to the sheep that stands right behind him. We probably are just just a notch leaner on the lamb in second, but he's given up a little bit of stoutness to me. And then when you handle him, maybe not quite the width, not quite the dimension in the top side of his skeleton as we have in our class winner, but still really nice Dorset appearing kind of weather in this particular class. Two good ones here. Congratulations to these exhibitors.
Our final class of our Whiteface influence, there should be 5 in this class. We are going to get you results here momentarily for our classes. Here's the results of your Whiteface influence class. Blue ribbon winners include Seth Worth, Mackenzie Pitzmeyer, Addison Fouch. Third purple will go to Joel Kavanaugh. Second purple exhibited by Micaiah Dela Cruz. And first purple goes to Kinley Fadick. In Class 2, purple 1 went to Lauren Richards. Second purple is Micaiah Dela Cruz. We apologize for the delay in getting you those numbers. We had a ShowWorks mess up, and it lumped everybody into a variety of different mixed up classes. So we do apologize for those delays.
Well, nice set of specs in this market division over here. Some things maybe that we'd change about some of these sheep, but I think we've got a sheep to win it that just overpowers them in terms of muscularity, in terms of width. Still really fresh, still really youthful in terms of his handle. He's the biggest topped, he's the biggest ended, he's the stoutest in terms of foot and bone work. One that's certainly, when you peel the hide off him, is going to be the most impressive in terms of carcass merit, with the width that he's got down his top and the leg score that this one's going to bring to the cooler. That's an awfully nice wether. Maybe starting to carry just a tick of cover, but I think he's certainly acceptable there. If I'm going to change him, it's going to be in his shoulder. He just opens up a little bit there, but there's just too much more muscle and power in him not to let him move up and win this class. Big top and big rack in the next one in class here that you really can appreciate. Love his length of side. I need to drop rear flanking him and balance him up just a tick better from the side. I'd like to see just a little more center body in him as we compare him to the lamb that stood ahead of him, and just not quite the overall volume that we had in our class winner. But I think as we compare him to the remaining lambs in class, he is more correctly conditioned. He is more expressive and shapely down his top. There's a lot of good things in this wether here that's second. I just balance him a tick with a notch more body and flank as we compare him to the sheep that beats him in class, but a good one there as well. Sheep starting to carry a notch more condition in third, but I think as we compare him to the sheep that stand behind him, he's the most balanced. He's big and bold and expressive at the base of his shoulder. He's really good on his feet and legs. He's good in his lines. If I could change him in terms of his handle just a bit, take a little condition off and express him up just a bit, he probably moves up one notch in this particular class. And then a pair in fourth and fifth that I think are really good wethers. I don't think there was one in here that doesn't have quality. I think this pair, when you get in behind them, are probably the two that get the flattest through the center of their leg. I think they're the pair that maybe don't have quite as much top side skeletal width as we had in the top three. And I think as you compare these two, the sheep that's fourth is just more balanced. He stays leveler down his top. He's more correct in terms of the way his head and neck attach and the look he gives you up to the front end. I think we've got a sheep in fifth that probably opens up just a notch better in his upper hip, but probably to me balances out the least of the sheep that we've got in this particular class. And I just want to change that about him in terms of the way his spine lays in him and the way he handles his rear legs. Good set, though, overall. Congratulations.
All right, we're set to bring him back in for the selection of your Whiteface influence to head to the final drive this afternoon in Class 3. Blue ribbon winners include Arabelle Rossmeyer, Sean Kavanaugh. Purple ribbon went to Brennan Karkowski. Second purple is to Kaylin Crumblis, and first purple goes to Elizabeth Skabinski. Representing your Whiteface influence out of Class 1, first did go to Kenley Fedek of the Brady FFA. Second went to Micaiah De La Cruz from Lakeview FFA. Class 2 first went to Lauren Richards from the Shickley FFA. Second place to Micaiah De La Cruz from Lakeview FFA. And in your Class 3, first place, Elizabeth Skabinski of the Ord FFA, and second place went to Kaylin Crumblis from the Sandy Creek FFA.
Well, if you would, let's congratulate these kids in our white-faced influence division drive as well. Good set of sheep. They've done a nice job getting these sheep fed and conditioned, a nice job getting them exhibited to me out here. And I think when we bring them back out here in our champion drive, it's a set of sheep that pleases me from the division and from those classes that each of these represent. I think, to stay true to what we've done all day, I like to find sheep that are good on their feet and legs, that balance up nicely from the side, that have got enough width when you study them on the three-quarter view, that are good in their upper hip, that handle with shape and dimension down their top, that are stout enough in terms of foot and bone size, but then they have to balance. They have to be tall enough fronted. They have to be level down their top and deep flanked and give me the right kind of look from the side. And I think when we analyze this group, there's just a pair that do that a notch better for me. I think when you get into that pair and you come in and handle them, there's one of those sheep that's just got more power, that's just got more width and dimension in terms of the way he handles down his top. A really good set. I think there's two out here that bubble to the top as being the most complete. I'll show you those two. Let's give them one more round of applause on a good set of sheep.
And our Whiteface Influence Division winner, congratulations to Elizabeth Skabinski from Ord. And our reserve goes to Kenley Fanek from Brady. Just a quick reminder, our final drive will take place this afternoon at 3:30.